everybody. I hope you are having a great day, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Weezy. Today, we are talking with Leanne Hoffer of the Clutter Consultant, and she is going to talk to us about some of her happiness training that she does with clients. So, welcome, Leanne. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm great. It's We're recording this on a Monday, and it couldn't be a more fabulous day. So, Leanne, I know you, but tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
So I am the owner of the Clutter Consultant, which is a residential organizing company. And through that, I discovered that people were really looking to be happy and that happiness was being buried in clutter. So I was able to study with Marci, who's a New York Times bestselling author, and I was able to be certified as a happy for no reason trainer.
So, for people who may not be familiar with, is her name Marci?
Mm-hmm.
For people who are not familiar with Marci, can you tell us a little bit about her and what her book is about?
Sure. So Marci co-wrote the Chicken Soup for the Women's Soul series with Jack Canfield. That's where most people know her. She was also a contributor to the book and the movie The Secret. And she wrote a book called Happy for No Reason. And what was interesting is I was doing some recon. I was being a little sneaky. And I was following her in a business that she was doing with another woman because I wanted to duplicate kind of what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up fully transforming my life, which is what happens when you do things sometimes on the fly. There's a bigger picture and a bigger plan.
Yes.
And she put out there that she was going to be certifying trainers and that she was only accepting a very small number of people. And they had, thousands of applicants. I was one of the first 50 that was accepted into the program, and I was accepted in 5 minutes during my interview.
Oh, wow. Well, let's touch you. You're awesome.
I'm on fire.
Leanne, you said you have done all these steps. Where did you start on these steps that you are finding listed in the book?
You know, that was a great question. So it was interesting. I had read the book. I had attended all the classes. I had to turn in videos. And in the video, you have to talk about your own happiness journey. And it was fascinating because I remembered when I was 4 years old, my mom used to take me for running errands like most moms do.
Yeah.
And we were out one day and it was getting later in the morning. We were getting hungry. So where do you think we went for lunch? I was 4.
You were 4. So like McDonald's or someplace like that, maybe?
Close. It was the local diner.
Local diner. Yeah.
Yes. So the local diner. And the reason I like to go there is it was run by a family and they were so kind and they would walk us in. And I always got to be a big girl. I got to sit in my own seat because their booths sat 2 people. So I had to sit across from my mom. And just like my mom, she would take the menu and she'd look at every page and every picture. I would do exactly the same thing. And then just when she was done, she'd put the menu off to the side of the table. I would do exactly the same thing. Well, the waitress came over this one day and she had a little spring in her step and she was smiling and she was effervescent and she took my order. She asked about my doll. And then she turned to my mom with this big grin on her face and she went to take my mom's order. My mom didn't even look at her. She was short. She was kind of rude. And she pretty much threw the menus at the woman. And I watched the woman walk away with her shoulders slumped. The spring in her step was gone. And it was in that exact moment that I said, I don't want to be like that. I want to be happy. And so that's where I made that decision. And what's interesting is that's the foundation to being happy, is to make the decision, to take ownership over it, to make that declaration that I am going to be happy.
So, I so believe that the power of words,
yes.
Then they enter into the mind and then it can all become a concept, because I mean, this video thing that I do, I never thought I could do this because at like 4 and 5 years old, I was watching TV and I was totally enthralled and thought it was like the most glamorous thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I stepped into it, I didn't like you were saying, you're going through these videos and then you realize, hey, I decided this at 4 years old. Just in the last couple of years, as I'm going through my journey of, really drilling down and talking about my passion, I'd had this in me the whole time, but it just had to, come come forward. And I married the two of them, together. So
And that's beautiful, right? I mean, I think that's part of it. We know what our calling is in life. It's just it has to kind of be planted and be watered. And I think that we don't water it. It's just like our happiness. We don't water it.
yeah, yeah. I read you know, being in art and creativity and stuff. And they talk about, when we're children, we draw pictures and we don't really care what they look like.
Mm-hmm.
It's not until but by the time we're like in the fourth grade, it's like we want more structure to our paintings. We want it to be more realistic instead of just kind of letting it flow and evolve. That's when our little perfectionist, I'm not good enough doubts start crowding our
Oh,
head.
yeah.
And it's so sad because we're so young, and so a lot of people by 12 years old, they're going, well, I don't do it perfect, I'm just going to give it up.
Yep.
And I just spent time with my granddaughter, and there was some things that she was saying like that, and I go, honey, I go, you're only 9 years old, you have a lot of time. Just take a step. Don't be afraid to fail, because in that failure is where you're going to condition yourself and you're going to learn and move forward and you'll get better. But don't be afraid of failing or getting it wrong, because we all need somebody to come alongside of us to help us make shifts and make corrections throughout life. And
Absolutely. And I think part of that is we've got this negative thing associated with failure, but you have to fail to learn. Failure is just feedback. It's feedback that what you didn't work, or didn't work right, or didn't work the way you thought it was going to work. So you
yeah,
have
so
to
you
try
just,
something else.
yeah, make the adjustments.
Exactly. If you made chocolate chip cookies and you didn't put something in it, you'd learn next time, make sure that I come out and measure it before I put all the ingredients in.
Exactly. You learn from the mistakes. And I don't know if, I don't know when this concept of, you have to do it. I know that I was raised, it was like, well, if you don't do it right the first couple times, then you might as well, well, you're just not really good at it and give up. And thank goodness I never took that to heart, because there's lots of things that I have pursued and become better at. And I still like going, well, I'm not the best at it, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. And look at where it's landed me. Here I am talking to you on the internet, having my own web show. So
And I get to talk to you, and that's exciting. And actually, what's interesting is that is one of the other steps to being happy.
it is.
It is. Don't listen to everything that your mind says.
Oh, I can't listen to most of the things that the negative things that my mind said, because they're lies. They're lies.
Right? They are. They're these messages that we've created to protect us. And while that was important at some point, sometimes we've maintained those messages longer than we needed to, and we're still living our life based on those refined messages that don't serve us anymore.
So, Leanne, all of this information, I think you and I are, right on the same page of the ideas of failure and, doing things perfect and not listening to those little voices in our head, because they are lies. Um, so do you have like any exercises to like reinforce these behaviors?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I can show you an exercise that will show you just how important your words that you say to yourself are.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay. So the way that you do this is you take your two hands, I'll pull up my sleeves, and line up there's like a little line right here on your palms, and you have
Mm-hmm.
one on either side. So just line those up and then put your
Okay.
hands together so you can see your hands together.
Okay.
Okay, do you see how your hands are right up next to each other?
Yes.
Okay, now take your hands apart And I'm choosing to look at my left hand, and tell your left hand to grow. Grow, grow, grow.
Grow, hand, grow.
Grow, grow.
Be strong, be lean.
Grow. No, grow big.
Grow big.
Grow.
Grow big.
Okay. Now, line yourself back up. Put your hands together.
Oh my gosh.
Is that not the craziest thing ever? That's how important your words are. So when
I'm going to have to show that to my husband tonight.
Yeah, well, be careful showing that to men. I'm not
Well, they might
further with that.
Yeah, men and boys, yeah, but
yeah, you know.
But you know that negative that everybody needs to, you know, change that conversation in their head and give themselves that affirmations.
Exactly. Just recognize when I have that thought come in, say, oh, I'm going to change that around.
Yeah. So do you have like a little suggestion of how to, when those thoughts do enter, just give me an example of something like that and changing the thought process in your head.
So have you ever heard of Byram Katie?
I have not. What, is she an author or?
Yes. So she came up with an exercise called the work. And the work is asking yourself a series of questions. So the first question, I want to make sure I have a cheat sheet here. I want to make sure I ask it properly.
Oh, yes.
So when you have a thought, the first question is it true?
Usually not.
And then the next question is, can I be absolutely sure it's not true?
Okay.
So the next question is, how do you react when you believe that thought? And then the last one is, who would you be without that thought?
I really like those questions. I need that list. So could you like can you share that in a PDF or something if people wanted
Absolutely.
that list?
I would love to.
Oh, that would be great. So Leanne, our time is coming to a close, but before we get off of here, I would like you to be able to share how people can connect with you.
Oh, thanks. So the best way to connect with me is either at theclutterconsultant.com, or they can find me on Facebook at The Clutter Consultant. We run workshops on happiness, and we help people to find their happiness that's sometimes buried underneath some clutter.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's always great to kind of unearth things, and there's always that sense of accomplishment afterwards.
My favorite words are, I've been looking for that. It feels like Christmas every day when we work.
Okay, with one more question before we shut up, because that was a great statement you just said. What's the best thing that somebody found when you've been organizing with them?
Probably the best thing was a woman who really had a tough time managing her mail. So we were talking about some strategies and techniques as we were sorting through a pile of mail that was probably, I can't even show you, the screen isn't big enough. I mean, it was just an entire counter filled with mail. And I was opening the mail and pulling out the guts and handing it to her. And then finally, I got to this one envelope and I opened it and it said the US Treasury. And I thought, oh, that may be personal. So I handed it to her. She jumped up and down for, no joke, 10 minutes screaming. She was so excited. I was so excited for her. Well, here's the interesting thing. I caught up with her about 5 years later and I said, so remember that check that we found? She said, yeah, you mean the $10,000 check?
Oh my gosh.
Right?
I want to find a check for $10,000, but
me too. For me,
really.
It was so exciting. I was really excited for her. And then, of course, we just went through the whole thing and jumped up and down again 5 years later.
And you know, that made her day. That made her happy to get all that clutter out to find that money.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, Leanne, as always, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I hope to be able to have you on more. And you gave valuable information. And if somebody wants to know more, we will have Leanne's information on the screen. So
Fabulous.
So with all of that, we're just going to say goodbye and have a great day, everybody.